Here we are again with the Lean Into Artcast, a show where some visual storytellers get together, engage with a topic, usually about visual storytelling, writing stories, communicating them visually. We think hard about visual storytelling, so you will too. My name is Jersey Droz. I'm a cartoonist and teaching artist. I'm back after 2 weeks, and Rob is gone. My co-host of the show, Rob Stenzinger, is not here today, unfortunately. He is at the I.O. Design Conference in Minneapolis. But we will miss him. But filling in for Rob are two excellent co-hosts. First up, we've got returning to the show, Brandon Dayton. Hi, Brandon.
Hello. How's it going?
Brandon Dayton of, let's see, Green Monk. Beautiful comic on Tapastic. I'm pulling it up right now. Former Disney. What was the title at Disney?
Just concept artist at Disney Interactive.
And which meant what? What did you do there?
Oh.
Well, honestly, mostly what I did is I did a lot of marketing materials. And I helped the in-game concept team every once in a while when they needed me. So, yeah.
You created a lot of really awesome high-end illustrations too. That Frost Giant one was legendary. And they hung your Frost Giants up in the hallway, which means they really liked them.
Ooh, that's nice.
Yeah.
And then the other guy who just spoke is Matthew Armstrong. First time on the show. Glad to have you here, Matthew.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. I'm a huge fan. So this was really cool when Brandon told me about it. I was like, really? Me? Yay!
I apologize for not inviting you in the first place because I knew that what we're going to talk about today is Sketchbook Summer, which I'll pull up on the screen. We talk a lot about art challenges, and particularly with regards to the unique one that you guys are launching. What, in like less than a week? Like actually this weekend.
Like
yeah, Saturday, right?
Saturday
on Facebook, Facebook Live. You guys will be doing some stuff.
Yep.
We'll talk about that in a minute, but sketchbooksummer.com. And I saw that both of you guys were listed as the originators of this thing, so shame on me for not inviting both of you in the first place.
Yeah.
And also, Matthew, you do comics on Tapastic as well, and I was just admiring the one where you reprised the end scene of Star Wars: A New Hope.
Yeah.
And there's the Death Star trench scene. I have you now. And then, what? And it's Voltron instead.
Like, thanks, Voltron. Ain't no thing.
That's the best explanation of the way Matthew's brain works right there. It's like crystallization.
This massive.
And I'm going to save the ending. People should go read the comic, and I'll link to it in the show notes. But I'm going to... Because like the ending after that is even better.
It's based on a true story, unfortunately. So, and I do make sound effects when I draw. So this is something and other things. So it's yeah, true story.
And Brandon, you get a lot of mentions on the show lately as we talk about a lot about the amazing YouTube videos, the essays that you've been doing.
Oh, cool! Thank you.
And particularly the most recent one that you did about how you color, or not the most, but a recent one you did on how you color, just kind of broke my head a little bit because it was like this huge. Of course, I should let more of the line art do things to make it more efficient. Why am I not doing that? and when you look at Brandon's stuff, it looks very rich and rendered, but there's very simple coloring going on underneath there once you break it down.
Yeah, well, those are the things you learn when you're out of pure laziness. You're like.
So, a couple of accomplished illustrators here who are now starting this new thing called Sketchbook Summer, hashtag Sketchbook Summer, launching July 1st, where you're challenging yourselves and everybody else by extension to fill a sketchbook in a month, right?
Yep.
Right, that's the game plan.
Okay, well, you guys want to just dive into it then? I mean, I got a lot of questions about this whole idea about why art challenges, because like one could easily say, oh, good, another hashtag slinging thing that I got to try to fit into an already crazy busy schedule, or it's like a big social event after all. Or is there something more to it? Is there something more to, like, are there practical benefits to be gained on that? Do you guys want to start there?
Yeah, sure.
Um, so, like, what are some practical benefits to participating in art challenges?
Matthew, you want to do that one?
Yeah, I can take that one, but you should take the sketchbook summer because it really came from you. So
Okay.
like that's I'm just kind of happy to be part of it. So what was the question again?
I did that typical. I do this to everybody, and I apologize. I sort of
No.
pack 6 questions into a really really long sentence. So maybe you guys could give us your description of Sketchbook Summer, where it came from, and then we can start to
Okay,
unpack
I'll
this whole
start
idea of
with
what art
that.
challenge is.
Yeah,
Right.
it's just I mean, I explained in one of my videos. I had an actual experience where I went to San Diego Comic-Con. This is in our announced video. We talked about this, and I showed my sketchbook to some artists, and one of the artists looked at my sketchbook and was just like, "Yeah, you need to draw a lot more." And he was like pointing to these different artists and like telling me like these artists, they fill up a sketchbook in a month, and I'm like looking at my sketchbook and I'm like, I don't fill a sketchbook in a month. And it's just kind of this wake up call. Just it kind of recontextualized for me how I thought about like the volume of output that I needed to be kind of putting into things to be able to grow as an artist. And unfortunately, it came along at a time in my life where I had the time to really dedicate to, after that, I sat down and said, okay, I need to put in a lot more time sketching. Um, and so we just kind of talked about doing this as an art challenge. There's a lot of kind of thematic art challenges, but I just felt like it really worked for me. Thinking of it in this way, there's something about the idea of filling a sketchbook over the course of the month that I think is a little bit like water. The way that water, it'll kind of fill whatever vessel you put in it. And I think it's really hard to conceptualize in a simple way how much work you need to do to improve as an artist. To say something like, oh, you have to draw 3 hours or 4 hours every day, that's very rigid, right? But if you say something like fill a sketchbook in a month, you can kind of fill that into your schedule however works for you. So kind of like that in that sense. That it's just this simple heuristic that I think can impel you, you know, uh, to kind of do this level of volume that you really need to grow as an artist.
There's also, I mean, even though there is like more flexibility in the like, it's not like, oh, you're checking in every day on this thing because like you're allowing for days like the 4th of July is coming up, which is kind of a big deal holiday in the United States, right?
Yeah.
But there's still clearly defined activities with a clear goal and a clear ending, right?
Yes.
It's easy to wrap your brain around that idea, and I think that's why I personally find art challenges really compelling because it's not like, oh, you're going to fill a sketchbook every month from here on until till the end. You're taking on this whole new job in your life. No, this is just for like 30 days, and then if you decide you want to keep going with it, sure. But there's a clear ending that you and a lot of other people are all meeting at the same time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
There's something about strength in numbers and something about, especially, when you're kind of in your art cave, making art all by yourself, but then when you kind of become something, bigger and we're all, sketchbooks, it's like really healthy daily exercise for your art, for your artist growth, your artistic growth, so to actually be doing that. And then you have like this kind of, a bunch of different people doing it with you, it's like you're taking this little fire and then you're adding it to this bonfire, and everybody's throwing things into the fire, and also we have this giant bonfire, and it's great. It's cool to be a part of.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, I'm kind of surprised at how many people I know are actually like, yeah, man, let's fill a
Let's
sketchbook
do
this
it.
summer. That'll be awesome. And it's
I
got a
know.
great
It's
theme
already
song
it's
to
already
it.
like grown way beyond us. I feel just like people
Yeah,
have been like, yeah, it was a great idea, and people are inviting friends, and I'm like, wow, people are actually like getting into it. And it's like, okay, we better do something now. We better like,
yeah. Now we're in now. Now we did it. Now we got to
yeah,
do something. Now we got to fill a sketchbook. So
yeah,
Yeah, I was thinking about that aspect too. As I was thinking about this conversation we're going to have, as I was like, the image came to mind of like an 8th grade mixer, where it's like it's a completely contrived event to get all the kids in one room, where there is a discrete short activity that they are all supposed to engage with, right?
yes,
And through that painful experience, new relationships might be forged or not. But either way, we're providing the platform for that to happen, right?
yes.
Um,
And even to continue the metaphor, like I was terribly shy in eighth grade, but I didn't want to be one of the people. I wanted to talk to girls, but it was like the hardest thing to do in the whole world. But so I'd force myself to do it, and I still kind of feel a little like it's even hard to just get on social media and try to put yourself out there and stuff like that. So this is me. Like I know I want to talk to girls, but I know I have to actually go out there and be uncomfortable to do it. So. I don't know if it's a good analogy anymore, but
But hey, I mean, it helps to have a wingman when you're trying to do that. You get all your
yeah.
buddies.
And that's that's actually kind of par for the course with Brandon because I always want to go to a Comic Con, and I'm scared to death to go to a Comic Con. But Brandon starts working with us, at Avalanche at Disney, and he's doing Comic Con, and I'm like, I've always wanted to do that. Brandon, how do you do this? Brandon, how do you do this? How do you Brandon, come on, Brandon, what are we gonna do today, Brandon? And Brandon, he's always been nice enough to kind of let me kind of copy him, and like so what's a table? Okay, so what's a and I was able to go to Comic Con and have like an absolutely terrific time and kind of break out of so this sketchbook summer thing is just kind of the next thing I'm following Brandon on.
I mean,
The next adventure.
if we can continue talking about Brandon as if he's not here for a second,
Yes.
one of the things that one of the things I really love about Brandon, and I've said like in other places, I feel like he's like a spiritual brother to me. Is that he has the soul of a teacher and a philosopher, and he absolutely loves sharing his experiences that he's gained through his engagement with art with whoever wants to listen. And it never felt like he's positioning himself as, all right, here I am, I'm on the top of the mountain, and I'm going to barf out this knowledge to you. It's more like, here's a way I like to think about things. This is the way it works for me right now.
Yeah.
Right? It's very usable and approachable, but it still challenges you to approach it philosophically, which is a reason everybody should subscribe to his YouTube channel, by the way.
Absolutely. I really couldn't agree more.
Oh, guys, flattery will get you everywhere.
But what about? I mean, like, what do I have to gain from? And I'm speaking of art challenges in general, like whether it's Inktober, whether it's like 30 characters in 30 days, NaNoWriMo. What do I have to gain as an artist by cramming this extra to-do list item onto my schedule?
Well, I think first of all, like you do have to decide if you have space for this extra to-do list thing. I mean, for me, one of the reasons I decided to do it when I'm doing it is because I do have this chunk of time that it's like, okay, this is a good time that I can commit this time, and there have not been very many times within the last 5 years that I could have done that. So I mean, I don't think any less of it, someone for not taking it on. It's a tool that's there that's like, oh, hey, if this is something you want to do. Um, but I think part of it is just there's this kind of like idea of like the default mode network. Like we have this way of like thinking that's just like this our habitual way of thinking and doing things. And it's just kind of a way of upsetting that, of kind of just getting you to kind of go into a different pattern and kind of push yourself beyond what you're used to. Um, and it's nice when you have some sort of templates that someone else can give you to kind of follow while you're doing that. And the hope is that you just kind of like break out of your assumptions about the way things are, and that as people engage in this challenge, they see kind of they're capable more than maybe they thought, and they can see themselves develop. I mean, when you do this much drawing, you can see yourself grow and develop like within a month's time. So
Yeah, easily, and it's all. What's kind of nice about a sketchbook is it's all in the one place, and so you can actually flip through it, and you'll actually time travel, through your journey on getting better and better. And the sketchbooks, I really think they're like probably the most important tool you can have as an artist. I mean, this is where you should be putting all your dreams and all your hopes and all the crazy ideas. Like I use them a lot to kind of save whatever notion I had because I know I'm going to forget it really quickly, and then I can take that notion later on and kind of flesh it out on the next page, and it's a really important thing to carry around. Like I carry around with me everywhere. I mean, my wife Isabel will drive, then I can actually use that time to draw. If I'm lucky, then maybe they'll go into the grocery store and do the grocery shopping. I can also draw in the car.
Yeah.
But I mean, just all the time, and just like you trying to get that 10 10,000 hours or 10,000 miles of pencil drawing, which isn't enough. You really need like even more. But this is teaching you good habits and freeing your mind and teaching, like Stephen King says, if you do something regularly, like keeping a sketchbook, I mean, then the muse kind of knows where to meet you, and then the muse will show up, and the muse will bring amazing gifts.
I've observed that directly too. Matthew is a guy that is totally dedicated to like sketching, and it's just like when we were at Disney, every meeting, everywhere he went, nose down doing sketching. So, yeah.
Sometimes I get accused of you're not paying attention. You're in your sketchbook. Like no, and I flip back to the sketch I did while they were talking. I'm like, okay, you said that Mickey Mouse can't have 3 buttons, and I don't see why not. And then I'll show them.
Picture Mickey Mouse through that.
Yeah.
Actually, that was one of you've been posting videos on the Facebook page, which we'll also link to in the show notes, with videos basically, and this was so clever of you guys, and I'm going to totally steal it for Art Sound Off this fall. Little short videos that give you sort of like prompts and prep to do before engaging with the art challenge. Okay, so you're committed to doing Sketchbook Summer. Here's some ways to frame up how to engage with this thing. And normally I would, Brandon, whenever you go down these kinds of like different ways of thinking and approaching things, I'm always like, oh yeah, I do need to consider that more often. But the one thing I was like, well, duh, was when you're like, carry a sketchbook with you everywhere. I'm like, well, why wouldn't you?
Right.
Like, you mean there's people who don't? Because yeah, I have a bag that I carry with me if I'm going grocery shopping. I take it with me because you never
Right.
know when a good idea is going to hit, or when you need to capture something, when a fleeting thought, and I don't want to be in the car repeating it to myself over and over again the whole drive home. It's
Right.
like
See,
right
and
there, right in the parking
that's
lot.
for
Grab it.
me. I do need that conscious prompt because it's there. I mean, sometimes it makes me think like I'm in the wrong business because I look around at other people that just like they just draw as like drawing to them is as easy as breathing, and for me, I feel like I do have to like okay, I gotta draw. Like I need to focus on it really consciously, to do it. So. Yeah, maybe that reminder for me, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you have a bag. I don't see it over there, but actually I have a bag too, and I carry it with me everywhere, and it has pencils and some sketchbooks and usually my 3DS. But my wife calls it did you bring your life? Like or if we're leaving somewhere, she's like, don't forget your life, honey. And because I just bring it with me all wherever I go and whatever I do.
Yeah. And I actually have like backup bags. I have like a smaller bag, and it has like another pencil case with like a copy of the other one. So like I don't
Yes.
have to switch them out. It's like, oh, I'm taking little bag today, big bag today, that kind of thing.
That's a
Little bag,
really
big
good
bag.
idea.
I got stranded on the side of the road one time for 3 hours, and I didn't bring anything to draw with, and all I had was just this stupid iPhone that you can't draw on. I don't know why you can't draw on iPhones. I know they make certain kinds of pens for it, but there's no pressure sensitivity. It doesn't matter, So that experience was so painful. I was like, never again. I'm never leaving the house without this thing.
Endless hours and seconds of
That was like gold.
uncreativity.
That was 3 hours I could have had to write.
3 hours we'll never get back.
All right, okay, so let's go into like what specifically about Sketchbook Summer now. So I'm wondering if we could like walk through a little bit about what a sketchbook looks like, because Brandon, another video that you guys dropped was you addressed this issue about the difference between a sketchbook and a book full of ready to publish drawings. And I know that my brain instantly went to, oh, another art challenge where I want to take a picture of this every day, and I got to make sure it's going to look good when I put this on Instagram,
Right.
I want this to be a very presentable piece that then I can say, oh, just a little thing I knocked out this morning,
Yeah.
like you do.
Who does that?
So, like, what does a sketchbook look like? What are you talking about specifically?
Should I show some of my sketches?
I
don't
would
know how well
love
it's going
that.
to show up, but I'll show you. I'll show you a couple pages. Let me see if how well this shows up. I'll have to give it a second to kind of. Does that show up okay?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's cool.
I'm reading
So
it.
this is like a page from my sketchbook, and you can see it's ballpoint pen, and there's some pencil sketching, but it's a lot of like half done ideas, not super finished. Let me see if I can find another one. Here's another one that's all ballpoint pen. This is the one I just did on the plane. This one's maybe a little bit denser than I even usually go. You know, just a lot of just exploring things, and some of the stuff I've taken and finished later. But yeah, here's one more. Um, so there's a lot of playing around, a lot of exploring. But there also can be kind of refining work. I wonder if I can find. I'll see if I can find an example of that. But there's a type of work where you're like, here's a specific idea, I want to figure it out, and you kind of go over it and over it and over it again until you kind of get. Let me show you this other one here. It's supposed to be a caricature of one of my nephews. So it's just like I'm drawing it over and over and over again, trying to get to a point that I like on it.
Yeah, and experimenting with different styles even.
Yeah, so there's that refinement. There's kind of the playing around. There's planning out my garden. This is not stuff you'd normally have in your sketchbook.
No, you do though. So it's a really good place for even lists like that. No, I do that too. Grocery lists.
But even this one, like this is me playing with a new type of pen. So I found this type of pen. You guys ever played with friction pens?
Uh-uh.
They're not
No.
super dark. They're kind of a grayish color. You can get them on jet pens, but they erase. So it's like a marker that erases.
Huh.
And so,
Yeah, they kind of a dull gray like a pencil, like graphite.
yeah, so it's also a place like where you can play around with new media. And I don't know if you can see, there's a little area here where I'm practicing hatching with it and then like pulling out with the eraser on it. I think that's kind of like
Oh,
right
interesting.
here.
Such a neat looking technique. I love it.
So none of it's finished. It's just like a lot of stuff I wouldn't show, normally, except to kind of demonstrate kind of, the concept here. But that's what it is. It's about exploration. It's about play. It's about refinement. And it's also very personal. I think that's a very important point, that a sketchbook should be a place where you feel like free to put anything you want into the sketchbook. And it's a place to make mistakes. So,
Yeah.
hey, buddy.
I wa-
Here's another one that's a good example of a lot of stuff I do. A lot of this you can't even tell what's going on. Like there's so many scribbles. I might be able to figure out what some of these scribbles are, but some of these scribbles are totally like indiscernible. And my son is here now too. Okay.
Hey,
Hey,
buddy.
bud, you got to go get your pajamas on, okay? No, not with that.
So Matthew, let's look at some of yours.
Oh yeah. Thanks. So this is can you see that one okay? So you can kind
Yeah.
of see just a bunch of ideas. I'm sort of going, like, I thought about Castle Grayskull as giant robot. I still think that's probably the best idea I've ever had, so I'm gonna do that. Really, and then you can find a giant robot version of Snake Mountain. Anyway, drawing all these robot dudes, and then I took it, and then the next day, and I took it into a watercolor
Mm.
kind of area, and then I was kind of daydreaming and thinking, so characters for me it's like kind of how comics stories, and I've almost never finished any of them, but I mean they start with just like drawing the character, and so this is like Dungeon Pig, and then I figured out his name was Hamlocks, and then so Hamlocks, and then maybe he has a friend, and maybe there's a dog that kind of looked like the dog I used to have, and then I took that and I was able to refine it into that kind of thing. And so I think I do that, and I'm working on a cityscape right now, and so I'm scribbling a lot of thumbnails trying to figure out what this place looks like and what the arches of the windows look like, and I'm spending way too much time designing it instead of just getting the dang thing done. But sketch, and then I mean it's just like, so there's lots of watercolor experiments. One day I decided I want to draw Underdog, so which is kind of outside of my normal style zone. Can you guys see that at all? But
Yeah.
I
it's
think
just
one of the
like,
cool things that Matthew's demonstrating is kind of the natural kind of progression of ideas within a sketchbook too. Like I love that there's a mix of really
like
rough developmental
I
stuff.
didn't like her design. It wasn't quite right. And then so I started resketching it, and it kind of redesigning. Can you guys see those? Okay, sorry.
Yeah, thumbnails.
Seeing and then redesigning her, and then I arrived, and then I thought, what if there was a Viking? But then I arrived, so then I pretty much tried the same thing again, but with this this new thing that I really liked a lot better, and then I wrote a story about it that I'll never finish. So
But yeah, I think it's worth noting that for those who are just listening in audio, that we were looking at a variety of media too. This wasn't just pencil sketches, just ink sketches. Same with Brandon's. It wasn't just ballpoint pens. It was also a variety of tools and approaches and disciplines at work as you flesh out an idea, right?
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. If that's your sketchbook, it's your place to play. I mean, it's not just for random ideas or strange, dream squirrels that you want to chase. I mean, it's like it's for I wonder if you can make a drawing with just like general office tools, like highlighters. Like it was fun to just kind of go into the office, and like just see what kind of stuff they had there by the Xerox machine, and then just try to like make something that didn't suck
Yeah.
out of it. But
Yeah. No, and mine. Speaking of Pig Warriors, this was development for my Pickles and Taft mini comic that I did a while back, and
oh,
I knew that I wanted there to be a chicken sorceress and a chicken evil sorcerer,
oh
and
yes.
so here's me just like sort of just really roughly just scribbling around, just trying to see what felt right, and the whole idea is like going to your sense of what you talked about laziness, Brandon, I'm like super, super lazy about time. I don't want to spend too much time in developing ideas. So I just hammer through like a bunch of scribbly things until I get something that, as it starts to develop into,
Yeah.
right?
Dude.
And same with the sorceress. I scribbled around with a lot of different birds until I got to, then it's okay, time to break out the crayons. Let's capture this and see what it looks like in color now, that kind of
That
thing.
staff is so cool.
Is it? Oh, yeah. Hey, it
Yeah.
does look kind of cool. Thank you.
What'd you use it color or do those little quick washes or is that colored pencil or is that watercolor?
That's Crayolas.
Oh, Crayolas, really? That's awesome.
Yeah, I also have a pouch of Crayola crayons that I keep in my bag with my everyday carry in case I want to do like a quick little art drop sketch kind of thing.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah.
then but then it's time to sometimes like time to switch to ballpoint pen and like just let's work on a compositional idea.
Yes.
And again, the whole idea is I don't want to spend an inordinate amount of time on the drawing until I know that it's actually worth investing in, right?
Right.
And like here's like a couple like I just one day I was like, oh, Boulder Fleet going trick or treating, and this became like a desktop painting that I did that I released on my Patreon, right?
Wow.
But it was just like it started with like dumb little like what would be fun things for them to do as friends is basically the question I was asking myself. Like, oh,
Yeah.
they're riding bikes. Oh, they're going trick or treating,
I
right?
love being able to see the genesis of your finished works. Like the rough energy there is like really awesome.
Yeah, well, and I don't know if you guys. I'm sure you get noticed this, but your rough sketches often have like 10 times the life of your finished thing, right?
They really.
Yeah.
Maybe not yours, Brandon, because yours are always like full of life. But
Here, you have an accuracy draftsmanship quotient that is not matched by most mortal men.
but also abandoning drawings. Like, so I'll get to the blue line stage and I'll be like, nope, this isn't going anywhere that I
Yeah.
like, and
Yeah.
then walking away from it. And so I wonder if that
It's
we could
like
hit. Yeah, go ahead.
you look at your guys' work, and you guys, it's hard to see it maybe for someone that's not as developed. But I mean, for you guys, you would consider those like failures, or not maybe necessarily failures, but that's like it's your first attempt. It's not really finished. It's not the one you really want to show. And like
Right.
that's kind of what a sketchbook needs to be full of too. It needs to be full of mistakes and the kind of wrong paths, even if it's not necessarily bad work, just like, yeah, this isn't the path I want to go on. There's like a different path I want to go on for something. So that's something we get a lot of
Sorry.
comments from people in that regard where they're like, oh, I just want to make sure all my stuff is good and I want it to look nice. And it's like, well, that it doesn't need to be that way.
Yeah.
Dead ends are totally fine. You know, abandoned
If I
things are totally fine.
if I had any hope for anybody, it would be like, I mean, because I really struggled with uh even trying to like I used to keep everything in a loose leaf kind of armored vault, like one of those like construction workers, and it's like made of metal. You can stick a bunch of loose leaves in it. Like
Yeah,
that. Like, well,
yeah,
I used to keep all my sketches in that, and I was afraid to do anything in a sketchbook because that felt just too scary. Like it just felt like oh, I'm committing too much, or I'm gonna ruin this beautiful $6 sketchbook, and
Yeah.
like and it took it took a while to kind of like give yourself or give myself license to
Yeah.
actually just draw in the sketchbook. And no, this is my paper. I get to do whatever I want. I don't care if I screwed up. Look, I tore one out. It's and to just like maybe Sketchbook Summer kind of helps you get anybody else who's struggling with that or something, just to create something every day, and that it doesn't matter what you put it in. You're not making the great American sketchbook novel, or it's not this golden precious sketchbook. It just has to be a place where your dreams go.
And I think one of the cool things about that is that when you finish a sketchbook, you start to see the beauty in the art of process. It's not just about the finished thing. I love going back and seeing an old sketchbook. First of all, after you sketch long enough, you start to realize, like, why was I so anxious as a kid? Like when I was trying to draw, it's like I got better just by putting in the hours. I got better, and it's great to go back and see sketchbooks and see yourself get better and better. And so that's one reason why I like to hold on to old sketchbooks and see all of my mistakes. But the process is a great story. It's great to see that process and see how an unformed idea, little by little, morphs into something that's more finished. So I mean, I hope people hold on to that stuff too. That stuff is like just as beautiful as any end product.
Yeah.
Can I also just throw in at the end of this little section? I think it's adorable that like our version of being daring and bold and heroic is ripping out pages of our sketchbook.
Yes.
Watch this, everybody. I take nothing for granted now.
I'm a real man. Look what I just did. Yeah.
But I want to. We're gonna take a quick little ad break. But I want to tease the next section with this. Is that something you said in your videos, Brandon? Both of you guys have said, I think, a couple different times in the beginning of this conversation. We've skirted around this idea of like the sketchbook is the place to fail, and I want to dig into that a little bit deeper. I think that's a really interesting thought, and I think it helps recontextualize what this whole art challenge presents as an opportunity for everybody. But before we do that, I do need to take a moment to thank some of the people who make this show possible. And the people who make this show possible are our Patreon supporters. Where's my Patreon music? Right there. So if you haven't heard of Patreon, it's basically like a Kickstarter but for ongoing things. So instead of paying, pledging once and then you get the thing, you pledge an ongoing pledge, like $1 a month. As little as $1 a month, you can help make this show sustainable. And we want to thank 5 people who have been doing just that. Nathan Seabolt. You can find Nathan Seabolt on Twitter at @N_Seabolt. We Are LA Tech. You can find them on Twitter at We Are LA Tech. India Swift, Old Swifty on Twitter, fabulous cartoonist and artist and animator. Miriam, I don't have your Twitter handle, but if you ever want to share it with us, we will be glad to give you a shout out on this section of the show. And finally, Kim Holm, Denungaher Holm on Twitter, amazing cartoonist whose work you can find. Well, you find by following him on Twitter at Denungaher Holm, and we will link to it in the show notes because that's kind of hard to spell, at least for Americans. But the Patreon is at patreon.com/leanintoart. You can find all the shows we produce there, but also the extra leans, the shows that we do once a month that are only for Patreon supporters. And that's also where you can continue the discussion with us in a safe place with only people who really believe in us and the stuff that we do. Thanks to everybody who supports us. And once again, that address is patreon.com/leanintoart. So, that was a tidy ad break. All right. Talk about this business of failing. Failing's bad, guys.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard, but failing in any endeavor is a sign of weakness, ineptitude, inability, lack of power. I don't want to share my failures with anybody, and I certainly don't want to celebrate them.
I never actually fell, ever. Is this a big hugging and kissing vulnerability session? Is that what we're talking about? Like, why is failing important? It's so important.
To put it in the most metal way I can think of, the throne of victory sits upon a mound of corpses.
Yes.
So I don't know if that even means anything.
It does.
Well, to some people, it means the failure of your enemies, right?
Yeah, that's that too.
But in your
out.
case, I think in your metaphor, you're speaking of corpses as in failed endeavors and experiments with your art, right?
Yeah,
so
that's kind of metaphor falls apart when you start thinking about it too
Well, no,
much.
every overnight success, every overnight success is based on like 10 years of, you know. I mean, you actually have a prototype green monk, right, Brandon? I mean, it's not a failure by any means, but I mean, it's
No,
like that's something that you did to build up to the, and
yeah.
then the current green monk is like this it's gonna be a classic, you know.
Well, I think, this is something that I think that starts coming out of like educational psychology nowadays is that like getting things wrong is an essential part of learning, and that's always something that's uncomfortable for people, but it's just like, as anytime you're drawing through something and you get something wrong, your brain immediately is like, okay, wrong path, shut down that path and let's find the right path. And it, kind of helps redirect you in the right way. So it's like failure is something you should seek out as someone that's studying art and try to learn art. You should try to find that, make those mistakes, because the more mistakes you make, the more you're going to get closer to the right thing, I think.
Right. It's like this radio lab I was listening to while drawing. It's like they're they're studying. They got the MRI machine so they can like look at people's brains, and then they got a video game of going down a hill on a bike, right? And so what they do is they'd have people go down the hill on the bike, and then they'd sleep, and then they go on and they scan them with the MRI, and then they'd have them go down the hill on the bike in the game again. Then they fall asleep. And what was going on is every time we go to sleep, your brain makes new connections. It rebuilds itself. It builds new synapses. It streamlines old synapses. It does it. And so if you're drawing every day, if you're doing the bike downhill video game, just by drawing something and going to sleep and you wake up and you're going to be highly more skilled at it because your brain knows that's something I need to do, and it's going to build itself into the ultimate sketchbook death power machine.
One of my absolute favorite things to see. I would love to have a website. This is a website I've fantasized about doing for years, but I don't think I'll ever do it. But I just love seeing artists and seeing their work when they were younger. Because any artist you look at, you see work when they're younger, and it's like, yeah, this is rough. This is not that good. They had to like figure out. They had to learn stuff, and everyone has to go through that. Everyone makes bad art. The
Yeah.
best guys out there, they've made more horrible drawings than any of us combined. You
Right.
know.
Right.
Um,
Actually, yeah, I saw Alex Ross. He did a tweet recently that's getting passed around a lot, where it has a Spider-Man drawing he did when he was 4 or something or 5, and then like he
right.
has like a current Spider-Man drawing. It's like showing that, and that's like a quick juxtaposition to show like here's what happens when you draw every day for your whole life, right?
Right.
But also, I think about I think something I hear I teach comics classes in Ann Arbor, and something I hear from a lot of my students is that like they're really, especially the teenagers, they're really interested in this idea of plateauing. They're really interested in hitting this level where it just comes naturally to them, or that they're interpreting that effortlessness that they see from when they're spectating, right? Like I want to have that level of proficiency where I don't have to think about it so hard. And to which I respond to them, I say, like, I don't ever want it to be super easy. Like, if I draw a page tomorrow that's just as good as the page I drew today, I kind of lost the point of even doing it, right? And so, like, something I try to get them acquainted with as early as possible is this idea that if you're not failing, you're really not challenging yourself. You're sort of cheating yourself out of big gains, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Absolutely. Stasis equals death.
Although I would say also to those that are younger, starting this journey, that like if you do put in the time, eventually you do get to the point where you're like, oh, there's some things I can do with this. I have tools that I can use,
Yeah.
and it's like you feel there is an empowerment that comes the more time you put into it. But yeah, you have to have those failures. That's like such a great point. I think about like the first comic I did when I was trying to do Grain Monk, and I just didn't know how to do anything, not knowing how to do backgrounds, and just the first time you do everything. And I still have that experience all the time. I'm doing a comic and I'm like, okay, I have to do this bit of architectural thing that I've never done, and it's like, let's try it. And it's like, yeah, after you finish, you're like, yeah, that wasn't the best thing I've ever done. I can see that. And but then the next time you do something similar and you're like, okay, remember the last time I did this? I want it to be a little bit better this time, And so That's another reason why comics are great. Is there's always something out of necessity that you're like, okay, I don't have no idea how to draw this.
Yeah, I think that it's I almost feel like it. It seems like it's really only in America this is going on, but comics are so underappreciated because, just to do one, I mean, you have to construct everything. You have to make everything. You have to draw. You have to not just be a good architectural artist, but you have to be a great cartoonist. But you have to be a great ink person to make great comics. You have to have so many disciplines, great vehicles, great, monsters and creatures. These are all different disciplines that some people, and then you bring them all together in a comic, and it's almost like people kind of take this amazing imagery for granted without actually knowing how many years it took to get to the point to actually be able to execute this amazing page or something. It's really the I feel like it's an underappreciated art form in America, but like Europe has amazing festivals, with history comics and every kind of comic under the sun, and manga in Japan and everywhere. It seems like everywhere else
The
is really appreciating it the right way. But
I
anyway, that's
just
something else.
I just got back from the to your point. I just got back from the Billy Ireland Cartoon Museum and Library in Columbus, Ohio. Have you guys been there or seen anything about it?
Mm-mm.
No,
I just heard about it from you.
So yeah, it's this like it's a museum for comic book art, and like Bill Watterson donated his entire run of Calvin and Hobbes, like all the Calvin and Hobbes art in existence is in their collection now, right? And
wow,
like
okay.
and it's they've got ongoing exhibitions of comic book art, and they have like permanent exhibitions where it's like, oh, here's a Prince Valiant page, here's some Will Eisner art, here's Todd McFarlane art, here's
Wow.
Popeye strips by E.C. Segar, all in the same place. And like when you walk in, you've this feeling descends upon you of like this is a place that cherishes and reveres our medium. And like there's a study room called the Will Eisner study room. I'm like, oh, it's not the Speedway reading room. It's not the Little Caesars Pizza reading room. It's not the Bank of America reading room. It's the Will freaking Eisner reading room. It's like they named it after a cartoonist, instead of
The
some donor.
cartoonist.
You know,
Yes.
so there are places like Columbus, Ohio. I have a deep, deep streak of envy for their city because that place feels like everybody there cherishes and reveres the medium of comics. And if you go to the CXC Festival, Cartoon Crossroads Columbus, which is this September, highly recommended. It's almost too much. It's almost too much. But anyway, yeah.
Sounds great. I want to go there so bad. I didn't know it by name, but I remember reading about where Bill Watterson donated it to this place, and that gelled, and I'm like, oh yeah, I've always wanted to go there.
Oh, it's so good. But also to your other earlier point, like I actually years ago posted on my Comics Are Great website, my earliest comic work still in existence, which is something I did in fifth grade.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Let's
so
see it.
I'm flipping through it now, and like this was what became a comic I did in 2005 called Silver and the Periodic Forces, and I kept the concept very similar, where it's about a silver alien who has a magic glove that can summon warriors representing each of the chemical elements, right?
Awesome.
And that was the original idea in fifth grade, and I redrew it right in 2005. And this goes to a question that Troy Shadowing Tronics had in the chat, and he asks, "Have you ever gone back to old sketches and have it inspire a new idea?" I'm curious if you guys have done that.
Yes.
You have an example?
I
I
knew
was
what
just
Matthew would answer to this. Yeah.
I was just trying to. It's like I want to grab it. It's like it's hard in this room because I know it's in here somewhere, but then if I try to go find it, like I won't be able to find it and stuff like that. But I think so I've been looking through a lot of old sketchbooks, and one kind of nice thing though is there's all these kind of throwaway ideas that I thought weren't weren't very good. I think when I drew them, but I'm like, hey, that's actually pretty good, and then I also no, that's something totally different. But I mean, well, I figured out that I actually wrote the same story twice. Like I wrote it in 2007, and then I must have forgotten about it. In about 2014, I saw notes for a story, and it's the same. Like so I must have really been into this story, but I didn't realize that. But I have the evidence of it. I just didn't know I did it. You know. But especially a lot of things I just barely did is I found some sketches in my sketchbook that I thought were really really cool, and so I scanned them in and I printed them out, and now I'm going to ink them. I've been inking all these sketches that were only sketches, but now I'm finishing them, and
Hmm.
it's actually like been this like really incredibly rewarding experience, and some kind of weird kind of like, past Matthew thanks, present Matthew, for future Matthew to, have, have completed, you know, past Matthew's, endeavors.
Do the various timeline Brandons contribute to each other that way?
Not quite as much. That's something I'd like to actually explore more this next month. I mean, I have been looking through old sketchbooks. So the experience I have looking through them is mostly like, why was I so hard on myself? That's that's more of the experience I get is like, hey, some of this stuff's pretty good. Like, I was like so hard on myself at this time. Some of this stuff is really fun, but there are things like as I'm going back and looking through where I'm like, oh, okay, I'd like to take this and like play around with this a little bit more. But yeah, that's not something I have like done in the past. So I'm kind of excited for this month, honestly, because I want to take it as an opportunity to really try a lot of things with sketching that I haven't done before. Like it's honestly like I want to use this to grow as much as I want to like as anyone else that's participating in this. So that's I mean just talking with Matthew as Matthew and I have been talking about sketchbooks and ideas and how we use it. It's totally changed the way that I'm thinking about approaching my own sketching. So yeah, that's something I'll explore for sure.
Yeah, it's not just one of the big reasons. Like I'm really excited to do Sketchbook Summer, and I want to improve as much as I hope anybody else improves. I need to improve as much as I need to do this as much as any other, anybody out there, probably more so. I mean, and I know that it works because I've tried something like this before, and so this is like, okay, it's like like I'm gonna try this workout. I'm gonna do this P90X, and I'm gonna be ripped, and at the end of it, I'm gonna be able to do this children's this graphic novel, that I've been
Right.
wanting to do forever. But I'm gonna actually be all warmed up and ready to run the marathon of actually doing something like that better.
I'm curious if you guys could back up and look at sort of like I guess this is kind of a meta thing. Like thinking about the difference in between sketching and doing like finished work, and also like your disposition and your thought process. Um, how is like what happens to you as an artist or to the work itself or both when you playfully explore ideas? Because you guys are both you both are talking a lot about like this kind of it doesn't sound as experimental to me, right? I'm not hearing as much of like I'm hearing a little bit of like running experiments, but I'm also hearing like sort of letting I can't think of a better term for this, and I apologize. But like letting your imagination do what it wants to do, and not judging it while it's happening, and like really kind of saying like, okay, what's going to happen today? We'll find out. Um, what happens to you as an artist when you do that spirit of play more often?
I feel um, whenever I sit down, and I know I can just start moving the pencil around. I was doing that today, and when that kind of, not all the time, but every now and then you feel like you actually caught lightning in a bottle. Like you get it and you like it so much, and it was kind of silly, but I was kind of drawing this character I have, Min, and I always kind of draw. I was just drawing, just to get the ball rolling, and then kind of out of nowhere, I figured out how to draw this kind of crazy mushroom person, but he's not like any other mushroom person. He's not like another design. He's kind of a different way of doing it, and I knew it, and I was like, this is. It's an original mushroom creature person, and if I break up the design, it could be like this, and it's just because I was kind of scumbling, and it kind of looked like this mushroom person, and it just hit me, and I think that's the best thing in the whole wide world. It's like the biggest rush is when you can actually, you're scumbling, you're moving around, you're maybe just even I think writers do it sometimes with just writing prompts and writing exercise, and they just kind of go off into the blue, go off into the ocean where nobody else is, and they find something, or it finds them, and the muse shows up and hands you the yummy cookie. It's I mean, that's the most fantastic experience. That's the fun part of being an artist, is that inspiration strike.
I find, I mean, there's two things that I think about this with this is like there's the part of it where it's like when I let myself kind of follow my fancy with sketchbooks, when I'm just like speculating on things and just doing following dumb ideas, it always pays off in ways I'm not expecting. I mean, I've gotten work out of just like dumb flights of fancy that I sketched and put up online, and someone was like, "Hey, I really like this thing that you like did about this," you know. And so I just think that playfulness and giving yourself permission just to follow like every silly idea that you have, um, a lot of times I think that's mining the absolute best part of you as an artist is like that playful part of you. And the other side of it is just like, especially if you work in art or even if you don't work in art but you're trying to do it on the side, sometimes it can get to a point where creating art becomes a real drag, you know. And part of it is just trying to recapture the joy of making art. And if you can be playful and just like kind of follow your fancy and your passion, and even if you don't end up doing anything with it, it's just like that's, I think it's really important to do the thing just for the sake of doing it, and finding pleasure in it.
You know,
Getting back, just one more thing, just getting back to the idea of failing. I think most of us have grown up hearing kind of the phrase from, you know, maybe our parents that like anything worth doing is worth doing well.
yeah.
And I heard a twist on that once where, you know, someone said once, well, you know, anything worth doing is worth doing poorly. You know, if you really love doing it, it shouldn't matter whether it's good or not. You know,
Oh,
just
that's
like
good.
enjoy doing it and do it
Right.
crappy and love it, you know?
That's pretty great. Uh, I also like this idea of like the flight of fancy flying in the face of something I sort of proclaimed at the beginning of the episode, where it's like we think hard about visual storytelling, so you will too. Like that's like been like one of the mantras of this show, which can suggest that we advocate for art being a pre-planned, methodical, very intentional endeavor. And for the most part, I do think like a lot of it is intentionality, right? But there's like this equally important component of being, like playful and sort of like lost in it and just letting stuff just happen on the page, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's times when thinking gets in the way. I know I've sat down to do sketches before, and I'm thinking like, well, I want it to be a little bit of this and a little bit of this and a little bit of this. I want to mix these three things together and see what comes out. And it starts to look like I took a little bit of this, a little bit of this, and a little bit of this, and smushed it, right? It's not very
Yeah.
aesthetically pleasing. But then when I play and I'll be like, oh, that this thing is a little bit of this and a little bit of this, and if I discover that after the fact, it usually
Yeah.
feels like more organic and more pleasing, right?
I
Yeah.
like, there's the Salvador Dali quote. Have you ever heard where he's like, people ask him if he uses drugs, and he says like I don't need drugs, I am drugs. Like, and that's the pinnacle of like art. If you can get to that point where it's just like you are just opening up the super highway straight into the subconscious. And some of my favorite stuff I'm most proud of, even in my comics, is stuff where I'm working on a page and I just have this idea, weird out of the blue, your idea, and I end up incorporating it, and it's something I end up being super super happy about.
Yeah,
Mm.
some of the things I'm most excited about, because probably one thing we want to win, with our drawing is sort of the war on cliches. I mean, we've all seen, how to draw something a certain way, or usually things are used in a certain way. All these cliches in art and comics and storytelling and movies and even music. It's kind of like we get sick of it, and we want to win the war on cliches. And one of the best weapons against that, I think, is letting your subconscious speak, and not because who knows? The best ideas are the ones you're like, where did that come from? And the only way to find that, I think, is to just kind of enjoy the journey of it, and you kind of wander out to where you haven't been or people don't go, and then you find things there.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Okay, it's about time for final thoughts, and I want to respect your guys' time. So I wonder. Here's my attempt at a prompt for our last 5 minutes together. Is perhaps we could talk a little bit about the value of just freaking starting, right? Because I think that's another big obstacle in. I was just at A2CAF a couple weeks ago, and we did a little drawing challenge called Super Random Comics Challenge, where we took like random headlines or random objects, and we had to mix them up into a little 8-page mini comic. And I had friends sitting next to me who were like agonizing over that first page, and I just wanted to, grab them and say like, just throw some lines down, and stuff will happen. I wonder if we could talk about that for just a little bit, like overcoming that initial hurdle of just freaking starting. But before we do that, I got to thank a couple more people who make this show possible, and those people happen to be me and Rob. We make stuff, and we hope that you will engage with our stuff. And the stuff that I would like to talk about today is my webcomic Boulder and Fleet, which you can find at boulderandfleet.com. Story about two best friends, a bear and a bird, who decide to go into business together as adventurers for hire. And whenever you do that, that means you're going to have adventures. And you can find it on Tumblr. You can find it on Instagram, Twitter, Tapastic. Just search for Boulder and Fleet. And there's even a Patreon if you want to get some behind-the-scenes stuff. I'm just about to start laying out some outlines for the new Boulder and Fleet story that I'm about to start working on. Rob makes a game called This Panda Needs You, and it is a block stacking game with cool physics in it where, Panda comes along, sees a nice visually pleasing stack of blocks, and then a mischievous little cloud comes along, knocks them all down, and you got to re-stack the blocks the way they were when you first got there. And you can get it for iPhone, iPad. It's in the iTunes App Store, or you can get it at this-panda.com. But if you are more here because you like the way Rob and I think about stuff more than the stuff we make, fair enough. This show itself is stuff that we make, and we have video workshops that you can download at leanintoart.com/workshops. There's comics workshops, there's UI, UX workshops, making video game workshops. And then, if you have engaged with all that stuff, you've downloaded the videos on our workshops page, you've read my comic, you've downloaded Rob's game. By the way, give it if you did buy This Panda, give it a review. And then another free thing you could do is giving the show a thumbs up if you're watching it on YouTube, or if you're listening to it on a podcatcher, giving it a 5-star review in whatever podcatcher you use, whether it's iTunes or Google Play Music or Overcast. That helps more people find the show. It raises our rankings in search. So we thank everybody who has engaged with the stuff that we make. And there we are. Here we are at the end, guys. Final thoughts.
Oh, it's sad. I'll just go really quick, and then Brandon's always got the best things to say. But anyway.
We'll save the final thought for Brandon.
I think so.
No.
But I think that blank white page is so scary sometimes. But just moving your pencil around on it, you'll find something in that whiteness, and then it won't be whiteness anymore. You probably will just end up seeing what you need to draw, and it will just kind of appear. It will come if you build it. It will come. Every journey starts with what the first step. No, I like the other one. There's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. And you got to put that pencil down on that white paper.
What was it Gawain who said that we should enter the forest adventurous where there's no way or a path?
Oh yeah, it's cool.
Because where there's a way or a path, it's someone else's path.
Yeah, nice. Very good.
Brandon?
Yeah, that's tough. I'm not really sure what to say. I mean, I like what you're saying there. I think the best thing I can say is just to tell people that there's something really magical about like taking that step of like joining heaven to earth and like bringing the imagination into the real world. Like you're a magician when you do that, But like a magician, even magicians have to do work, to make their spells. And this isn't about winning a trophy. This isn't about having some like finished perfect piece. This is about like going on a hike. So, each step you make, each page you finish, each stroke you make with your pencil is just another step. You're just taking a step. That's how you take a hike, just one step at a time. So, focus on that, enjoy the journey. And, after you've gone a ways, you'll have a chance to look around and see like this beautiful vista that you've earned, through your efforts.
Yeah, I just saw somebody posted an analogy about writing when they were talking about mountain hiking with a friend, and they were like, it was a steep climb. They were a little bit out of shape, and they were noticing that they were being overtaken by other people, and they kept looking up at how much further they had to go, and they kept looking back, seeing the people overtaking them. And finally, their friend said to them, "It's like just look at the ground where your feet are. Just look a little bit ahead of you because that's how you're actually going to enjoy this experience. It's not going to be about measuring where you are on the path because you're not thinking about where you are right now when you're measuring where you are on the path, right?" Um, like I think that's pretty good metaphor for being creative as well, right?
Absolutely.
Well, guys, this was awesome. Thank you for doing this with me.
Oh, thanks so
Thanks
much.
for
This was
having
I
us.
had an absolute blast.
We should make a note. What Sketchbook Summer is at sketchbooksummer.com. But like, what's going to be the rollout for this thing? You guys are going to be doing something special to kick it off.
Yeah.
Saturday.
Saturday, yeah, we're just going to do a live kickoff. So we're just going to be over at a local coffee shop at Blue Copper Coffee. So if anyone's in the Salt Lake area, they can come join us. And yeah, we're just gonna live stream some things. Probably show us just starting our sketchbooks, and we'll just chat about sketching, and we may talk about some of the same things we've talked about today. And you know, I think it'll be a nice way to kind of get things started and get people pumped and ready
It'll
to
be a
go.
party.
It'll be a party.
Yeah.
That's also a really great idea. I've noticed that Tyler James does this with his comics. He does like a Kickstarter podcast called Comics Launch, and he uses Facebook Live a lot to kick off different challenges that he puts out to people. Just a great way to sort of start the clock, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we artists have to stick together, and it's kind of nice to. Uh, it's nice having. I enjoy the company of other artists.
You know, something I got really excited about when Google Hangouts first started, like what was this, like 5 years ago now almost, was that whole notion of being able to like just turn on a Hangout and just leave it running and people could just bip in and bip out, you know?
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's like if I don't like it was supposed to be this casual way to like have that sort of sitting on the front porch kind of vibe, right? I'm sitting on the front porch, I'm ready to talk if anybody happens to walk by. But being a freelance cartoonist in what that entails, sort of, at least for me, it necessitated that I had to schedule it. If I didn't schedule it with friends, it just didn't happen.
Yeah.
But these kinds of like discrete events too, and I think this goes back to something we were talking about earlier about like that mixer vibe, creates that sort of like that random interaction kind of thing
Yeah.
while you're all doing it together, right?
I
Yeah.
think creating art is a really, really magical experience, but creating art with other people is just on a whole other level. And it's like it's rare. There's economics of it make it so hard to do that, but any opportunity you have to make art with other people can be like really transcendent. And so, hopefully in a little way we can help that happen in doing this. Um, but we'll see.
And we should also say, like, you're encouraged to share your work with the Sketchbook Summer hashtag, right?
Yes,
All right.
absolutely.
Yeah, we're gonna be combing through it and trying to, you know, post a bunch of the cool stuff we see. And I mean that's what we're gonna do. But I can't wait to see what people come up with. I really
Yeah.
can't.
Well,
I've already seen some cool stuff, so some people are
yeah, I've
already
already seen some
cheating and
cool stuff
starting.
on.
So
I just did a search on for the Instagram hashtag for Sketchbook Summer, and already stuff is popping up.
Oh,
yeah,
cool. That's great. It is kind of
Um,
catchy.
but I'm playing along, and I invite everybody who's listening to this who does illustration to play along as well. Let's share our crummy, sloppy, half-developed, half-baked ideas this July. I think this is gonna be a lot of fun.
Yes.
awesome.
All right. So, anything else that you guys wanted to give a shout out to? Where can we find you on Twitter or Instagram, whichever you prefer?
Oh, I don't tweet too much, but I tweet all my Instagram stuff. But on Twitter, I'm at Matthew Art at Matt the Wart, so two T's, just And then on Instagram, I'm Matthew.s.armstrong.
Matthew.s.armstrong.
Yeah, so hopefully
Gotcha.
easy to find.
We'll link to that in the show notes as well, because
Oh,
yeah,
thanks.
you post really beautiful stuff there. People should
Oh,
follow you.
thanks so much.
Brandon, what about you?
I'm most active these days on YouTube and Facebook. But I do post. I mean, I post a lot of stuff to Instagram. Kind of my standalone pieces. I usually post to Instagram and then kind of like, you know, um, push those out to the other platforms. So
So what's the Facebook address that we should?
Facebook. Oh yeah, it's just Facebook. So the Sketchbook Summer, that's kind of going to be our home base for Sketchbook Summer. Facebook.com Sketchbook Summer. But then on Facebook, you want to look for Green Monk. Facebook.com/Green Monk Comic, I think it is.
Mhm.
That's kind of my home base on Facebook. So.
Great. All right. Well, thanks again, guys. I would love to do this again. Maybe we can, after Sketchbook Summer, do like a post-mortem.
Oh,
That'd be
that'd be
rad.
so fun. Yes.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, like right afterwards, we'll be like, all right, how you guys feel? And you'll be like, ah, tired.
For sure.
Look at our arms.
Yes, we're all going to look like Dwayne Johnson when we're done with this. Our bodies are going to be poems when we're done with this.
The Rock.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for downloading, listening, and watching. This will be archived at leanintoart.com and on patreon.com/leanintoart. Until next week, I have been Jersey Drost of leanintoart.com and Jersey on Twitter. This is the part where I say, okay. Oh, I was going to say okay. Now I say okay, bye.
Show notes for this episode can be found at leanintoart.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at the user leanintoart, and you can reach us via email at leanintoart@gmail.com. And remember, leaners aren't wieners. Thanks for listening.
Okay, I'm going to kill the stream. Thanks for hanging out with us, everybody.
Yep.